My MIL sent my kids a puzzle that, when assembled, spelled out, "Your mom doesn't love you." She thought it was subtle, but it ended up in court as evidence in our harassment case. I never thought I'd end up fighting my mother-in-law in court, but here I am. It all started with a puzzle, a harmless, colorful kids puzzle that turned out to be the most vicious attack on my family I've ever faced. I don't even know where to begin, but I guess I should start with the history. Because this didn't come out of nowhere. I just never expected it would get this bad. My husband, Mark, and I have been married for 10 years. We have 2 amazing kids, Sam, who's 8, and Lily, who's 6. We live in a small town outside of Columbus, Ohio, where everyone knows everyone, and secrets are hard to keep. We've built a pretty good life for ourselves. I work part-time from home, and Mark's a manager at a manufacturing plant. We're comfortable, our kids are happy, and I thought everything was going well. Except for my mother-in-law. She never liked me. Not from day one. When Mark and I started dating, she was cold but polite. I thought she was just protective of her son, which I could understand. But after we got engaged, she stopped pretending. She said straight to my face that Mark was settling and that I'd never be good enough for him. I was stunned. Mark confronted her about it, and she played the victim, saying she was just worried he was rushing into things. He defended me, but I could tell he was torn. She had a way of making him feel guilty, of twisting her words to make it seem like she was only acting out of love. When we got married, she showed up in a cream-colored dress. It wasn't quite white, but close enough that people were whispering. She gave a long, teary speech about how Mark was her baby boy and how she hoped he'd never forget where he came from. I smiled through it all, determined not to give her the satisfaction of knowing she got under my skin. After Sam was born, things got worse. She criticized everything I did as a mother. If I bottle-fed, she'd talk about how she breastfed all her kids. When I breastfed, she'd say it was weird to do it in public. She'd claim it was an innocent mistake, but it happened too often to be accidental. Then the gifts became more pointed. She gave Sam a book about kids with mean moms who learned to be nicer. She gave Lily a doll that came with a step-by-step mommy makeover set, pointedly saying, "Maybe your mom could use some tips." Mark said I was overreacting, that she was just being clueless. I tried to believe him, but it felt deliberate. She was trying to undermine me, to paint me as the bad guy in my own home. But I never imagined she'd go as far as she did with that puzzle. It was right after Christmas. A big, colorful box showed up on our doorstep, labeled "To Sam and Lily, love Grandma." There was no note, just a sticker with her handwriting. The kids were thrilled. They loved puzzles, and this one had bright animals and a jungle scene. I figured she was trying to make peace, maybe feeling guilty for her behavior over the holidays. I should have known better. That evening, the kids tore into the box and spread the pieces out on the living room floor. I was cleaning up the kitchen, half listening to their chatter as they worked together to build the picture. They were laughing, excitedly calling out the animals as they connected the pieces. I smiled, glad they were having fun. Then Sam called out, "Mom, what does this say?" I walked over, wiping my hands on a dish towel, and looked down at the puzzle. My heart sank. There, right in the middle of the colorful jungle scene, were the words, "Your mom doesn't love you." At first, I couldn't believe it. I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. But no, it was right there, spelled out in perfectly coordinated letters that were woven into the animals' patterns. It was subtle enough that an adult might miss it at first glance, but clear as day once you saw it. I stared at it, feeling like the ground had dropped out from under me. Who would do this? Who could be so cruel? Then it hit me, this wasn't a mistake. This was her. She did this. My body went cold. I could barely breathe. Sam and Lily were looking up at me, confused, still too young to understand the words they'd just pieced together. Mark walked in, took one look at my face, and then at the puzzle, and his jaw clenched. He scooped the kids up, ushering them into the other room while I frantically gathered the puzzle pieces and shoved them back into the box. My hands were shaking. I wanted to scream, to cry, to drive straight to her house and demand answers. But I couldn't fall apart. Not in front of my kids. Mark came back, his face pale with anger. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. We both knew who was behind this. The only question was, what were we going to do about it? Mark wanted to confront her right away. He grabbed his keys, his jaw set and his hands shaking. I'd never seen him like that before, so furious he could barely speak. I stopped him, though. I knew if he showed up at her house in that state, it would only make things worse. She'd play the victim, twist his anger around, and somehow make it all my fault. She was good at that. Too good. Instead, we sat down at the kitchen table after the kids went to bed, the puzzle box between us like a bomb waiting to go off. I took a deep breath and opened it, spreading the pieces out carefully, my hands still trembling. We put it together in silence, neither of us wanting to say the words until we saw it for ourselves. And there it was again, your mom doesn't love you. Right in the middle of the picture, hidden among the colorful animals. It was deliberate. Calculated. I felt sick just looking at it. Mark ran his hand over his face, his eyes red with anger and disbelief. How could she do this? To her own grandchildren? I didn't have an answer. I didn't know how someone could be that cruel, how she could hate me so much that she'd use my own kids to hurt me. I wanted to cry, but I was too angry. I was done being the bigger person, done keeping the peace. She had crossed a line, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I took pictures of the puzzle from every angle, making sure to get clear shots of the message and the box with her handwriting on the sticker. I knew we'd need proof. She'd deny it, of course. She'd play dumb, act innocent, and accuse me of making it all up. But this time I wasn't giving her the chance. The next day, we called her. Mark put her on speaker, his voice steady, but cold. Mom, we need to talk about the puzzle you sent the kids. She hesitated, just for a second, then answered in that fake sweet voice she always used when she was lying. Oh, did they like it? I thought it was just darling. I felt my blood boil. I wanted to scream at her, to tell her exactly what I thought of her, but I kept my mouth shut. This was Mark's fight, too. I needed to let him handle it. He didn't waste time. Did you look at it before you sent it? Did you see what it says? There was a pause, just long enough to confirm she knew exactly what she'd done. But then she started her act. What are you talking about? It's just a cute little puzzle. I ordered it online. I thought they'd like it. I could almost see her batting her eyelashes, playing the clueless grandma. Mark wasn't buying it. It says, your mom doesn't love you, right in the middle. Did you know that? She gasped, but it was too dramatic, too rehearsed. Oh my goodness. No. I had no idea. That's awful. I'd never. Are you sure you're not just misreading it? I snapped. I couldn't hold back anymore. We have pictures. It's clear as day. How could you send something like that to your own grandkids? Her voice turned cold, the sweetness vanishing in an instant. I don't know what you're accusing me of, but I won't be talked to like this. Maybe if you weren't so sensitive, you wouldn't see things that aren't there. Mark's face turned red, his hands balled into fists. We're done, Mom. Until you explain yourself, you're not seeing the kids. We won't allow you to hurt them like this. She exploded. She screamed, calling me every name in the book, saying I was turning Mark against her, that I was a manipulative, evil woman who was poisoning her family. I'd heard it all before, but hearing her say it to Mark's face made my stomach turn. She didn't care about the damage she was doing, the pain she was causing. All she cared about was being right, about winning. Mark hung up. We sat there in silence for a long time, the weight of her hatred pressing down on us. I didn't know how to feel. Relieved that he finally stood up to her? Angry that she'd stooped so low? Heartbroken that she was willing to destroy her own family just to hurt me? But things only got worse. A week later, a CPS worker showed up at our door. Someone had called in an anonymous tip, claiming our kids were being emotionally neglected and that I was an unfit mother. I knew exactly who made that call. We let the worker in, showed her the kids' rooms, their toys, their schoolwork, all the proof she needed to see that our children were safe and loved. She was polite but firm, asking us all kinds of questions about our parenting, our marriage, even our finances. I felt violated, exposed. That woman had planted doubts about me, about my ability to care for my own children, and I was powerless to stop it. After she left, I broke down. I sobbed until my throat was raw, my body shaking with anger and fear. Mark held me, whispering that it would be okay, that she couldn't break us. But I saw the worry in his eyes. She was escalating. She wasn't just attacking me, she was trying to tear our whole family apart. Then the letters started coming. Handwritten notes slipped into our mailbox, and signed but dripping with venom. Your kids deserve better. Mark would be happier without you. You're ruining their lives. I kept every single one, knowing they were proof of her harassment. Mark wanted to confront her, to demand she stop, but I knew it wouldn't work. She'd deny it, twist the story, and somehow turn herself into the victim. But the worst was yet to come. One afternoon, I went to pick the kids up from school, and the teacher pulled me aside, her face full of concern. She told me that Mark's mom had shown up, demanding to see Sam and Lily. She told the school staff that I was mentally unstable and that she needed to take the kids to protect them. Thank God the school knew us well enough not to believe her. They refused to let her see the kids and called me immediately. But I was shaken. She was getting desperate. She was trying to turn the whole town against me, to paint me as some kind of monster. And if she was willing to lie to the school, what was she going to do next? I knew we needed help. I called a lawyer that night, laying everything out, her harassment, the puzzle, the CPS visit, the letters, her attempt to take my kids. He listened quietly, taking notes, and then looked me straight in the eye. You need to get a restraining order. This isn't just petty revenge. It's a campaign to destroy you. Mark agreed. He was finally seeing her for who she really was. But even as we started the legal process, I couldn't shake the fear. She was dangerous, more dangerous than I ever realized. And I didn't know how far she was willing to go to get what she wanted. I thought about the puzzle, the way she'd hidden that message in plain sight, knowing my kids would read it, knowing it would hurt them. She was cunning, manipulative, and relentless. And she wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. Just when I thought we were doing everything right, gathering evidence, working with the lawyer, protecting our kids, she blindsided us again. It started with a call from Mark's boss. He pulled Mark into his office, closed the door, and told him that someone had filed an anonymous complaint claiming Mark was stealing from the company. They said he was embezzling funds and using his position to cover it up. There was no proof, of course, but the accusation alone was enough to spark an internal investigation. Mark came home that night pale and shaken. He'd worked at that company for over a decade. He'd built a reputation as a hardworking, honest man. But now his integrity was being questioned, and his job was on the line. We both knew who was behind it. She was trying to ruin him to get to me. Our lawyer advised us to document everything and stay calm. He was confident the investigation would clear Mark's name, but the damage was already done. Gossip spread like wildfire through his workplace. People whispered behind his back, eyeing him with suspicion. He couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, his mind constantly racing with fear of losing his job, his reputation, everything he'd worked for. Then, she escalated again. One morning, as I was dropping the kids off at school, another mom stopped me in the parking lot. She looked uncomfortable, shifting on her feet before finally blurting out, I don't know if you know this, but there are rumors going around about you, about your mental health. My stomach dropped. What rumors? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She looked at me with pity. Someone's been saying that you're unstable. That you've been neglecting the kids because of it. I didn't believe it, but, you should know people are talking. I thanked her and walked back to my car on shaky legs. I sat there for a long time, my hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to catch my breath. She was poisoning my entire life, turning people against me. In our small town, rumors like that could spread fast. They could ruin friendships, get CPS involved again, even jeopardize my part-time job at the community center. Mark was furious when I told him. He wanted to call her, to scream at her, but I knew it would just fuel her fire. She wanted us rattled, panicked, off balance. And it was working. I tried to hold it together, to stay strong for my kids, but every time I walked into that school, I felt eyes on me, judging me. I started getting paranoid, wondering who believed the lies, who thought I was an unfit mother. It made me anxious, jumpy. I felt trapped, cornered in my own life. Then one day, I got a call from the police. They wanted me to come down to the station for questioning. I thought it was about the harassment case, so I agreed without hesitation. But when I got there, the officer looked at me with cold suspicion. He asked if I was aware that someone had been using my name to open credit cards and rack up thousands of dollars in debt. I was stunned. No, I didn't, I stammered, my heart pounding. He showed me copies of the credit card applications, all filled out with my name, my social security number, my address. It looked like my handwriting, even my signature. But it wasn't me. I hadn't done this. They questioned me for hours, asking where I was on certain dates, who had access to my information. I told them everything, even my suspicions about my mother-in-law. But I could tell they didn't believe me. To them, it looked like I'd opened the cards, spent the money, and was now trying to pin it on someone else. They let me go, but the investigation was still open. I went home feeling like my life was falling apart. Not only was she trying to destroy my reputation and my family, but now she was framing me for fraud. If they charged me, I could go to jail. I could lose my kids. Mark was beside himself. He started staying up late, combing through bank statements, checking our credit reports, trying to find any evidence that could clear my name. It was taking a toll on him, on us. We were fighting more, snapping at each other out of stress and fear. She was tearing us apart from the inside, just like she wanted. We thought things couldn't get worse. But then she went after our kids. One afternoon, the school called and told me that someone had tried to pick up Sam and Lily. A woman who claimed to be their grandmother. She told the office staff that I'd been hospitalized for a mental breakdown and that she was there to take the kids home. Thank God the school had strict policies. They refused to release them without my permission. But the thought of her trying to take my babies sent me into a panic. If she was bold enough to try that, what would she do next? We met with the principal the next day, showing him the restraining order we were working on. We added extra security measures, passwords, and strict pickup rules. But I was terrified. I couldn't sleep, constantly listening for noises outside, terrified she'd try to take them from our own home. The paranoia grew worse when I started noticing cars parked outside our house, the same ones over and over again. Sometimes they'd sit there for hours before driving away. Mark tried to reassure me, saying they were probably neighbors or delivery drivers, but I knew better. She was watching us. Stalking us. I went to the police, but without proof of who was behind it, they said there was nothing they could do. They suggested installing cameras, so we did, high-tech security cameras that recorded everything. I watched the footage obsessively, looking for signs of her, waiting for her to make her next move. Then, one night, I saw her. I was reviewing the footage from the camera overlooking our mailbox when I saw her car pull up. She got out, wearing a hoodie pulled low over her face, and shoved an envelope into our mailbox, before driving off. My hand shook as I opened the mailbox the next morning and found another letter, filled with cruel words about how I was failing as a mother and how my kids would be better off without me. But this time, I had proof. We handed the footage over to our lawyer, who immediately filed for an emergency hearing to finalize the restraining order. He told us that this was more than just harassment, it was stalking, identity theft, and attempted kidnapping. She was escalating, becoming more dangerous and unhinged. We were building a strong case, but I was scared. If she was willing to go this far, how far would she go to get what she wanted? Would she try to break into our house? Would she hurt me to get to the kids? Would she try to turn Mark against me by planting more lies? The puzzle had been her opening move, a warning shot that I didn't take seriously enough. Now she was going all out, attacking every part of my life, my family, my sanity. She wanted me gone. And she was willing to destroy everything to make it happen. But I wasn't going to let her win. Not this time. The emergency hearing was scheduled for a Friday morning. I barely slept the night before, my mind racing with fear and anticipation. Mark was tense, but determined, his jaw set in that stubborn way that meant he wasn't backing down. I could see how exhausted he was, the dark circles under his eyes, the weight of his mother's actions pulling him down. But he stayed strong for me, for our kids. We walked into the courtroom, hand in hand, feeling like we were stepping into enemy territory. She was already there, sitting primly at the defendant's table with her lawyer, looking calm and composed, like this was all just a minor inconvenience. She even had the audacity to smile at us. I wanted to scream. How could she act like this wasn't her fault? Like she wasn't destroying our lives? The hearing started, and our lawyer presented the evidence, the puzzle, the letters, the CPS report, the security footage of her lurking outside our house. When the video played, showing her slipping that hateful note into our mailbox, her face went pale. She hadn't known we had proof. For once, she didn't look so smug. Her lawyer tried to argue that it was all a misunderstanding, that she was just concerned for her grandchildren's well-being, that the letters could have been from anyone, that the puzzle was just a bad coincidence. I couldn't believe the lies, the excuses. She was twisting everything, playing the victim, just like she always did. Then she took the stand. She looked straight at Mark with tears in her eyes, her voice trembling as she said, "I did it because I love you. I did it because she's tearing our family apart. I was only trying to protect you and the kids." Mark's face turned red, his fists clenched at his sides. "Protect us? You called CPS on us. You tried to take my children from their mother. How is that protecting us?" Her mask cracked. She glared at me, her voice dripping with venom. "She's manipulating you, Mark. Can't you see? She's controlling you, turning you against your own family. You were never like this before she came along." I felt my stomach twist. It was always my fault. No matter what happened, she found a way to blame me. I looked at Mark, terrified that her words would get to him, that he'd doubt me. But his eyes were cold, his voice steady. No, Mom. I'm like this because of you. Because you can't let go. Because you hate her more than you love me. She gasped, like he'd slapped her. How can you say that? I'm your mother. I raised you. Everything I did for you. Mark shook his head, his shoulders sagging. No. Everything you did for yourself. You never cared about my happiness, only about keeping control. You tried to destroy my family, my marriage. You tried to take my kids. That's not love. That's hate. The courtroom was silent. Her face crumbled, tears streaming down her cheeks. But I saw through it. She wasn't sad because she felt guilty. She was sad because she was losing. Because she was finally facing consequences. She turned to the judge, her voice desperate. Please, Your Honor. I just want to see my grandchildren. I'm all alone. They're all I have left. The judge looked at her with pity, but his voice was firm. You crossed a line. These actions go far beyond concern or love. This is harassment. Stalking. Identity theft. You've shown a clear pattern of behavior meant to harm and manipulate this family. The restraining order is granted, effective immediately. You are to have no contact with the plaintiffs, including the children, until further notice. She screamed. A raw, guttural sound of anger and desperation. She tried to rush toward us, but the bailiff grabbed her, holding her back as she sobbed, Mark. Don't do this. I'm your mother. She's lying to you. She's poisoning you against me. Mark didn't look at her. He turned his back, walking out of the courtroom with me by his side, his head held high. But I saw the pain in his eyes, the heartbreak. No matter what she did, she was still his mother. And this was killing him. We drove home in silence. The kids were staying with my sister for the day, so the house was empty and quiet. Mark sat at the kitchen table, his shoulders slumped, his head in his hands. I didn't know what to say. I hated her for everything she did to us, but I couldn't help but feel sorry for him. He'd lost his mother today, even if she'd never really been one to begin with. She was never going to stop, he whispered, his voice breaking. No matter what I did. No matter how hard I tried to please her. It was never enough. I wrapped my arms around him, holding him tight as he cried. All those years of guilt, of trying to make her happy, of letting her manipulate him, all of it came pouring out. And I held him, feeling my own tears fall, mourning the family we'd never have. The aftermath was brutal. Mark was a wreck, spiraling between anger and grief. He started going to therapy, trying to untangle the years of emotional abuse and manipulation she'd put him through. It wasn't easy, and there were days when he just shut down, barely speaking, lost in his own pain. The rumors didn't stop. She kept calling people in town, spreading lies about me, about Mark, about our kids. But the restraining order held. She couldn't come near us, couldn't contact us. And for the first time in years, I felt safe. I thought it would feel like victory, like winning. But it didn't. It felt hollow, like we'd lost something we never really had. I realized then that revenge doesn't feel good. It doesn't fix what's broken. It doesn't heal the wounds or erase the pain. It just leaves you standing among the ruins, wondering what could have been. Mark cut all contact with her. He blocked her number, deleted her emails, even changed his phone number when she wouldn't stop trying to reach him. She begged, pleaded, tried to guilt him into letting her back into his life. But he stood firm, knowing she'd never change. The kids stopped asking about her. I thought they'd be sad, that they'd miss her, but they didn't. I realized then how little of a presence she'd actually been in their lives. She'd never truly cared about them, only about using them as pawns in her twisted game. Months passed, and the pain began to fade. We started to heal, slowly rebuilding our lives without her shadow looming over us. Mark became more relaxed, more himself. He laughed more, played with the kids more. He was finally free. But every now and then, I catch him staring off into space, his eyes distant, his face heavy with sadness. I know he's thinking about her, about the mother he never really had, the love he never really felt. And all I can do is hold his hand and hope that someday, he'll find peace. I learned something from all of this. Sometimes, the people who hurt us the most are the ones who are supposed to love us the most. And sometimes, the only way to protect yourself is to walk away, even if it breaks your heart. I don't know if she'll ever stop hating me. I don't know if she'll ever take responsibility for what she did. But I do know one thing, I'm done letting her control my life. I'm done letting her poison my family. And for the first time in years, I feel free.